Welcome to a special edition of the Hoop Journal podcast. Today's episode, we are revealing our 2024 NBA awards ballots. Mitch, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great because this is the first time where game eligibility actually has like some real serious ramifications because there are some names who are like they're like you didn't play 19 seconds enough. You played too many games under 19 minutes. You don't qualify an award. I'm very happy because there's some names where are no-brainers and then there's some names where you're like, "Oh, that's a potential winner." So I'm super excited this year because I'm not for the first time in a long time, I'm not like there's one for sure name. Now I'm like, oh, I could make a case for X, Y, and Z. So I'm super excited to get into it, and I'm really happy that the players who ended the ladder for each award are the players that I like can make genuine arguments for.
hmm Yeah, I think this is a year where most of these awards are pretty wide open. Rookie of the year, I think is pretty locked up, but for the most part, these awards, yeah, there's a lot to be debated. So let's jump right into our ballots. Let's start with MVP. I think the top three is pretty cemented in whatever order you want to put them in, but the top three guys of Jokic, Luka, and SGA, it's pretty much going to be everyone's top three. I'm pretty sure at least. Um, I'm assuming that's what yours is. Do you have that same top
Yeah,
three?
I don't have them
Okay.
in that order, but I have those top three.
Neither do I. What is your? I'll let you go first. What is your MVP ballot for
Okay,
this season?
you're not gonna like this one.
Okay.
So in terms of, I think in a vacuum where voters fatigue is a fallacy and where people don't get sick of the same player over and over, I think Jokic, just straight off of having a dominant 27, 12, and 9 season, he has the best total plus minus this season. He's second in assist, he's third in boards, fifth in total points, ridiculous true shooting percentage of almost 70%. Jokic, in all sense of the terms, is the most valuable player this year. However, my boy over there getting the youngest one seed, having probably one of the most consistent stat lines of all time, consistently putting up 31, 6, and 6 every single fucking night, like it's clockwork. It's tough to say that, like, does he deserve it so much more over Jokic or Luka? I don't know. But I do think that getting the youngest possible one seed isn't something to like kind of scoff at. It's something that you should be like, whoa, like this team's legit and they don't have to wait. They are here now. So it's not just so that that's like crazy eye-popping numbers in comparison, but it's just the amount of like kind of like everything that has set up for Shea to succeed has happened because he's made it happen. His storyline's great. He has to play with a pedophile on his team, so it's really hard there. He has to go through a bunch of like trials and tribulations. For some reason, Abraham Lincoln's still playing basketball, so it's really hard for that. Um, he lost his best player in Alexei Pokusevsky, so it's like everything that he's done this year is very, very like stoic to me, and he's Canadian, so it drives that home. I would actually have Shea as my 1A and then Luca my 1B
Hmm.
because I'm so in love with the fact that so Luca came in rookie year, told everybody it's easier to score in the NBA than it is to score overseas. He is averaging 34 points. It's like 33.9, but I'm going to round up to 34 points, 9 assists or 9 boards and almost 10 assists. And the Mavericks, since the deadline, have been lethal. He now has that closer next to him in Kyrie, and look what he did. He led the league in scoring. I think we're about to see the paradigm where Luca leads the league in scoring in like consecutive years, or at least is at 32 plus pretty much like every single season. So it's no disrespect to Mr. Doncic this year. I do think he will grab one in the next like 3 years,
Yeah.
but I think Shea has done enough to be like, you know what? Every storyline is rallying for the Golden Boy right now. I think Shea kind of gets the edge for me. Now, I did see the return for a lot of like pages. So like Hoop Central did one, and NBA District and NBA In Depth voted on one. And even though Jokic didn't get the most first place votes, he had the most second place and third place votes. So it looks like the community kind of is rallying behind Jokic. I would just personally have Shea, Luca, and then Jokic.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Sider, I think you'll be surprised to learn that I also don't have Jokic number one. I think it's very hard to make a statistical case against him. Like you said, all the numbers. and all the advanced stats too, the win shares, the VORPs, the Schmorps, all that stuff.
He's also
He's
got like hustle stats on him this year, which is crazy.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's got like
All the
loose
numbers,
balls and everything.
yeah, all the numbers do point to Jokic having another MVP season. I really don't have a statistical case to make other than how consistent SGA was. Like you said, every single game putting up basically 30 plus. Um, for me, it's just that when you look back on the season, I'm going to think of SGA as more of that most valuable player, like you said, leading the youngest team to the one seed. Um, just given the way the NBA is going with numbers being inflated across all aspects of the game, I don't really look at Jokic's season and think that he has to be the most valuable player because of the statistical output. Like it's becoming less and less important to me. Obviously, stats still hold great importance when it comes to NBA awards, but looking back on this season, I just think of SGA as being, in plain terms, the most valuable player to his team. Obviously, the Nuggets without Jokic are not a great team, but I still think they'd be a competitive one. I think that Jamal Murray probably would have played more games this season, had there be if there was just no Jokic. Whereas that Thunder team, I mean, the expectation for them was like if they got a 4 seed or a 6 seed, like that's a great season for them. What SGA was able to do to carry them, it really lead them on a consistent basis. To me, like I'm gonna look back on this year and think of SGA as being the most important player to his team. But
Yeah. Yeah.
statistically, there really is no case to make. I do have Jokic second, and I have Luka third, um, because of the statistical case. Like Jokic once again was just absolutely dominant. Um, but I have SGA one just because when I think of the season itself, like you look at the numbers at the end of the 82 games, and it points to Jokic, but just my own personal memory thinking back, more just like eye test sort of so to speak. SGA was just more valuable, more important to the Thunder's success this season.
Yeah. I my thing with having Luca at like the two and like 1B in this case is just seeing him string together kind of like I think for the first time in my like history of watching him of actually being like wow, like this is actually happening right before my eyes. They went 16-2 in the last 18, and a large part of that was because he realized that he has a competent core of players around him at this
Hmm.
point, and he can finally be like, okay, sure, I'm not going for 62, but what I will go for is 34, 12, 11 with a stock, and then Kai can actually close games. And I think like you can do it the same thing. You can be like, oh well, he's playing next to a future Hall of Famer. That should take away from his MVP case. It's like I think if you were to pan out on a whole like season wide spectrum, how rough Dallas was to begin the season, and then how they ended the season, strictly because Kyrie and Luca figured it out. I think that plays to the like the strength of like, oh my God, Luca like is not just the heliocentric player. He can actually prove that it wins games. Because I
Hmm.
think that was the remember when everybody was like, "Oh, would you take Prime Harden or 2023 Luca or 2022 Luca?" And everybody was like, "Oh, dude, no doubt it's Harden." It's like I think at this point you could say that if if Luca beats the Clippers, which considering the Clippers' history of playing against Mr. Doncic, I strongly believe in that. But if Luca is able to make like a Western Conference Finals run, I think the debate is no longer going to be like, you know, which peak for peak is better. It's like, is this even the best we're going to see of Luca? And
Yeah,
if that's the case, that's phenomenal. But like you said, there are it's almost like a feel good moment to like really bring the yin yang back to the NBA for Shea to win because he has a fantastic storyline. He's got pretty much nothing was supposed to be OKC with the 1 seed in the cards. They were supposed to be, hey man, if you can secure home playoff advantage, like that would be over exceeding every expectation.
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the Vegas odds had them fifth or sixth, or
Hmm.
like high end fourth seed or like fifth, sixth, worst case scenario. And then they got the first seed. So it's like to me, that speaks volumes of like just how valuable Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is. You could make the thing of being like, well, look at how amazing Chet has been. Look at how amazing J Dub has been. Like they've been such a cohesive unit. And this is no respect, no disrespect to Mr. Williams, but if you placed Jamal Murray as that like Jamal Murray as that
Yeah.
first
Right.
option would translate so much better than forcing Jalen Williams to just slide into that role. And
Hmm.
like again, I really believe in him as a player, and I do think that eventually he'll be an all star. But come on. Like if we remove the first options on these teams, I think Jamal Murray can do a little bit more heavy lifting than J Dub would. So
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I
Shay's,
think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, because Shay's like evolution into this player of going from kind of like this like really shifty slasher to like a really like decent stationary shooter to the Black Steve Nash, as he eloquently put it, has been like such a revelation that I don't think enough people talk about just how many evolutions his game has actually gone through. They kind of just say, "Oh, he's gotten better." It's like, no, he's transcended the entirety of like every piece of his arsenal. He's
Hmm.
become a player where he's no longer just a good scoring threat. He's the guy that you build your entire team around. And then he gets Abraham Lincoln, and it's like cinema.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think back to like the beginning of the season too. That's kind of what pushes SGA over the top for me. Like the Mavs and the Nuggets both started off relatively slow, especially to how they finished the season, especially like, the Mavericks. But the Thunder were consistent from the start of the season. SGA was leading that. So for me, I think he's the best pick. Jokic is the heavy favorite given like the Bontemps straw poll and all things like that. So it'll probably go to Jokic, and I have no problems with that by any means. But my pick, if I were to have a battle, would go to SGA. Who do you have in your last two spots? This is where I think it gets a little more interesting.
Um, so I probably have, and I know this one's going to be a little crazy because you're not going to like it, but I have Giannis and then Tatum.
Okay.
Mostly because this year for Tatum was really weird for me because everything pointed to the signs of had almost like a really like nuclear rise to like third on the ladder from everybody. Like he at one point you were like, this could be a Tatum MVP year.
Yeah,
But
once Boston sort of separated from the rest of the league.
yeah, it like the 10 game gap that they had at one point, which widened to 15, but the
Hmm.
10 game gap that they had at one point made me believe like, holy shit, like Tatum's gonna run away with this award. And it was weird because at one point I remember watching where it was 28, 8.5, and like 5 assists on really good splits. And then I think Jason Tatum said to himself, I'm going to start coasting now because we have a 15 game gap. And he
The
let
whole,
his
I
foot
mean, the
off
whole
the
team
gas.
really did that. Yeah.
Yeah, he let his foot off the gas. And then Jalen Brunson comes out of fucking nowhere,
Hmm.
puts up blistering numbers, player of the month for the East, like does so many things that you can make the case that Jalen Brunson is that fifth player on that list.
Well, I'm gonna make the case that he's fourth on the list. I got him ahead of
Okay.
Giannis and Tatum. I
Okay.
think,
That's interesting, but
yeah,
I
what
will
he
let
did,
you.
like when you talk about valuable, what he did to lead that Knicks team to the two seed, and them getting the two seed over the Bucks at the end of the season, there's probably what has me putting him one spot ahead of Giannis. But what he was able to do without Mitchell Robinson for most of the year, OG Anunoby missing so much time, I think that says valuable more to what Giannis did this season, where his coach got fired, 40 games into his career, and nothing has felt good about this Bucks season from the start. I do think part of that definitely matters. We're talking about most valuable, like vibes with the Knicks have been, stellar from the start, whereas the Bucks have been nothing but a disaster internally. So, for me, Brunson deserves that fourth spot, and then I have Giannis fifth. Tatum, just the supporting cast that Tatum has. The last month plus of the season, they're resting two starters every single game and still basically blowing teams out every night. So, Tatum had a fantastic season, but I MVP, I think I had to lean more towards Brunson, which to me we'll get into in a second, but it's slightly different award than All NBA, which is more, I think, individual. But Brunson carrying that Knicks team, I think he deserves a spot on the top five.
Yeah, like I would put him five, and the reason I wouldn't have him over Giannis is because everything that was held against this Bucks team. So terrible locker room issues, Dame looking like a shell of himself, Middleton disappearing into the face of the earth, Bobby Portis having prime Splash Mountain games and then kind of turning into the worst forward combination on the planet,
Hmm.
and Giannis night in and night out put up 30, 12, and 7. Like efficiently did his job, went in there. I'm not going to hold anything against him for continuously playing through injuries, coming back from injuries really quick because he hasn't skipped a beat between them. He's looked a little rattled, and I think emotionally he kind of feels like this version of Dame is not who I expected to be playing against.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's Drew Holiday? Get him fucking back here. Like this is insane. But the fact that like again, it's another year of ridiculous efficiency and ridiculous dominance from Giannis physically. I don't believe that the Bucks in my the rest of my lifetime of watching their iteration are going to do anything more than maybe make an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. I think if you really want to make the case to me that Chris Middleton can return to any like realm of form, that sure they push the Celtics to like 6 games and then get bounced in the Eastern Conference Finals. Like I think that's best case scenario. Brunson, on the other hand, I love the fact that he did all this with barely any OG Anunoby
Hmm.
and kind of having to say Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, you are going to be my new star players. Grimes is, or sorry, McBride is an interesting
Pulled
revelation
a Stephen A.
because
Smith.
I did Stephen A. Smith, but McBride's weird because like despite him looking really good, I still don't really believe in him if that makes any sense.
I
Like
understand. Yeah, he has been great, but it does feel like it's maybe not real.
something isn't there's not enough substance, I guess, for me to be like this is a sustainable thing for next year.
Mm.
Like
It's kind of just a lot of like he's hitting threes. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And if the shots
the
just
don't
start not
miss
going in,
strategy is working. So
yeah,
like
you're right. Yeah.
but like Josh Hart, I know that he is capable of
Hmm.
contributing in these ways. I know Dante DiVincenzo is capable of being that 2-man lineup with him. So it's like I don't feel the same way as I go further down the line. And I think this is gonna be crazy, and you're gonna hate me for this, but like I think Brunson deserves a better running mate than Randall, even if Randall has played good in this kind of like
Yeah.
off and on kind of rhythm. Like I would love to see
Yeah, and he's missed a
uh,
ton of time too, obviously.
yeah. I would just love to see if all three of them can be healthy and stay on the floor together, what this next team could have actually done in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I would if they can get relatively close to full strength, I like their chances against the Bucks in the second round.
Oh, yeah.
They got their
I
hands
think
full with the Sixers, I think. But yeah, I think the Knicks could definitely make a run. Let's move to Rookie of the Year. Obviously, Wemby's winning the award. There's no doubt about it. There was some debate in the first 20, 30-ish, maybe even 40 games of the year, but second half of the season, he ran away with it, no question. Chet will be second. I think he would be a pretty, runaway Rookie of the Year winner in most seasons. But most seasons don't include a 7'4" Frenchman, so he'll finish second. And I think pretty much locked up. Brendan Miller will be third. Any problems with that there?
no, I do have a new vision for my first and second teams though. So
Okay,
if you wanted
interesting.
to
Well, who makes up 4 and 5 on your ballot?
uh I want to say Jaime Jaquez Jr. still is around that like 5-4 spot just because of like I get it at the end of the year they acquire Rozier, he loses more minutes, they play Jovic. It's so weird because the Heat like they did him kind of dirty because he was like
Yeah,
really contributing in like the sense of like, oh, like you're that guy that Spo found out of the blue, got 20 plus minutes and cooked with him. And then Hero got healthy, and then he lost more minutes. And then of course Jimmy Butler's like, this is who we're running, and this is what's gonna happen. So probably Amon Thompson and then Jaime Jaquez Jr. for 4 and 5.
okay,
Now
interesting.
you can make this is where I'm gonna get a little kind of dicey. You could make the suggestion to me that like Pods or Derek Lively should be there, but then
Yep.
you've got like 3 centers on the first team, and I know it's technically like it doesn't matter where they lat, but I feel like voters wouldn't do that. Like I
I
just
think rookie, like I don't know, now everything is positionless, but all rookie teams have always been. And I feel like most of the time voters don't really care. They just vote the best five or the best 10 for counting both
I
teams.
feel like this year though, because the big debate is between 2 centers,
Yeah,
two
that could hurt
bigs.
Lively's case.
They
Yeah, I
they
see
they
that.
might be like, well, Lively's so far distant from those two, then like why
Yeah,
would we make him a first teamer?
it's a good point. I had Lively six. He was like the first guy off for my ballot. I had Pods fourth and then Jaime fifth. Just because, like you said, Jaime's role sort of decreased early on in the season. I mean, he was like very clearly going to be third. But
There was
when
weeks where he jumped Chet. Like
yeah,
there were
yeah,
weeks
yeah,
where he was
for sure. Yeah, he was early on had a great impact for Miami, but sort of tapered off. And he's been good, in the playing game, and then today against the Celtics, he was pretty solid. Um, so I have him fifth, but Pods was good, from start to finish this season, became a starter for them. So I think that's a pretty solid top five. Like I like that you included Thompson for me. He was more sort of lingering on my second team, but um, yeah, I think Podzimski and Jaquez are probably the right choices. And then actually we'll save the whole rookie teams to the end. We'll do all NBA, all defense, all rookie. Let's
okay.
move to defensive player of the year. Who do you have? I think it's pretty much become a 1 and 2 debate. And I don't really like where I ended up, but unfortunately, I personally have Rudy Gobert as the defensive player of the year. Um, I couldn't do it with Wemby, given how bad the Spurs were. Defensively, obviously, they sort of came on the last month or so, but as good as an individual can be on defense, I do still think that having a good team defense matters for who wins Defensive Player of the Year. And so I just couldn't give it to Wemby. And just the fact that he's going to win like 7 more in the next 12 years,
Yeah, yeah.
figured we don't have to give him this one. He'll have plenty of time. But I don't love giving Gobert's fourth for pretty obvious reasons.
No, no.
But
I think
it's,
Gobert wins it
yeah,
strictly because it would be too egregious to give Wemby. Like
yeah.
it's not that Gobert deserves it more. It's that Wemby shouldn't get it yet. And that's the big problem. Is
Yeah.
I cannot confidently say that Rudy Gobert has been the hallmark better defender than Wemby this season.
Mhm.
But yes, San Antonio has had egregious ratings, and that's because nobody else could drive like guard a parked car. Hell, I thought Sohan was supposed to be like the defensive Swiss Army knife, and I saw
Yeah.
him
No,
not
he's
guard a pylon. It was
yeah.
insane. So
Yeah.
for me, it would go Rudy, Wemby, and then Anthony Davis.
Yep. I'm with you there too.
I the message to all you Bam lovers out there. Bam is not the Swiss Army knife that you guys are making him out to be. He's a great roamer. He is not a vertical rim protector like motherfuckers say he is. I would take this healthy version of AD in like oh shit, we've got to play catch up and somebody broke through like no offense D'Lo. You suck. No offense. D'Lo's man is a blown by and instead of giving up a floater like Bam would, AD comes in and erases it. So AD's third. You can make an argument to say Bam and then Derek White if you want.
Mm.
I'll say that. I know some people like Jarrett Allen, but I would give Derek White the edge over him if I was to make like a top five.
Interesting. I love that you said Derek White. I have that same top four: Gobert, Wemby, AD, Bam. I went with Alex Caruso in my fifth spot. I do have Derek White all defensive first team, but I leaned Caruso over Derek White just because I tried hard to not be a homer in this, and we'll get
No,
to that when we talk
I'll
about all
give Derek
defense
White
teams.
his flowers. He's earned it.
Thank you. Yeah, led all guards and blocks this season, and obviously the defensive impact goes way beyond that. But um, just yeah, very impressive from him. I really was splitting hairs between him and Caruso for my last spot. But I try to lean away from the Celtics bias because I had some Celtics bias on these all defense teams, which we'll get to. So
I'll say a crazy take right now.
go ahead.
Derek White had essentially like the D Wade defensive version like this year of like a guard that you will contain on the perimeter, but will also erase you and meet you at the rim. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if you're a 6'8" forward.
Yeah.
Derek White will challenge you, and more often than not, he won a lot of those challenges. There's two real specific ones that are like nagging at the back of my head, and one of them was actually on RJ Barrett, which was fucking unfortunate as hell. But I remember it was just like a quick little like pick and pop. Barrett goes off the left wing, and then Tingus Pingus, as much as I like his mobility, was caught like super left stance. So RJ comes in and it was complete vertical. Like RJ came up and then Derek White jumped right after him, and then D White just smacked it right at the top of the rim. And I was like, I literally
Yeah.
watched it and was like, what the fuck
Yeah. He
happened?
does
Like,
that basically once a game. I think he had 83 blocks on the season. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
he basically did that once a game. Yeah, very impressive stuff. Do you want to get move next to most improved or coach of the year?
I MIP is weird for me because I think there's a clear favorite, but I
Me
want to
too.
see what you have to say about it because I'll say this right now. My most improved player
Hmm.
is a player that I thought was going to win it like a year prior or at least compete for it, and then he never made that jump. But this year, Kobe White actually made that jump.
Yes.
I love Tyrese Maxey. I absolutely love the jumps he's made. But Kobe White to me was it's just a no-brainer. The
Yeah,
dude
yeah.
like actually was like, oh, I'm the face of this Bulls franchise now. Patrick Williams fucking
Patrick Williams, who?
sucks.
Yeah.
He's terrible. DeMar's aging. They're gonna offer him 40 mil a year for 2 years, and
Oh
then
my God, I saw that today. I
he's
couldn't
gonna
believe it.
decline it because he probably wants a 4 year contract. The Bulls are gonna say no. They're gonna trade Levine and build around Kobe White. That's
As
it
they
right
should.
there.
As they should. Yeah, I also have Kobe White as the winner. When it comes to most improved, like miss me with the Tyrese Maxeys and the Alperen Şengün's. Like most improved to me is not about the high lottery pick that we know is going to be good. Well, I guess neither of the guys were high lottery picks, but
No, no,
like
they were not.
the guys that we know are sort of going to take a leap. Guys that were good last year and just have a bigger role this year. Like, did anyone expect Maxi to do anything besides what he did this season? Like, he had some really good performances early on that were like, oh wow, okay. But with Harden leaving and them not really replacing him with any high usage creators, like obviously he was going to take a step up in the points per game production. Like to me, Maxi is not really that much of a better player than he was last year.
No,
Like he just had more opportunity. Sangoon, I think, definitely improved, but also with him, like he had a huge uptick in usage. The offense started to really revolve around him, and leading up to the injury. So for me, like those guys are not really most improved candidates. So my top three, I have Kobe White as a clear runaway favorite. Second, I have Denny Avdia, and third, I put Naz Reid. Naz Reid is a little bit circumstantial as
okay.
well because with Cat's injury, he sort of was able to step up into a bigger role. But I definitely feel like he's improved for me at least because I remember last year people talking about him like he was the next big thing, and I was like, he's the Timberwolves' third big, okay, but he was really good for this season from start to finish, and really stepped up in a big way when Cat went down. So I wanted to acknowledge that. But like other guys I considered, like Aaron Nesmith was on my list of guys.
That
Like,
one, I was gonna say, some people actually were kind of like yapping about that, and I was like, I get it, but it's also like you said, there there's a more heavy diet of shots available on these teams. Somebody has to scoop up some extra shots. That
right.
shouldn't immediately be like D How's a great example because he has shot Chucker McGee and shot Chucker Jones on his fucking team, and he still has to find a way to improve, and he
And he
did.
did, yeah.
Like that's the crazy part to me. Like if you look at Kobe White, he's doubled his production for more than doubled his production for points.
Hmm.
He barely averaged 10 last year. It was like 9.6 or something.
Yep.
He's up to 20 to closing out the season. The more insane part is that every single step of the way, Bulls fans were like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And Bulls management was like, how about DeMar for 42 minutes and oh, everybody else is injured. Okay. I guess Kobe, you can take over. And then he's like, no, give me the fucking ball and get out of my way. He did it. I don't care if Maxi scored 54. Congratulations, you took up the shots that Harden didn't have. Like
Exactly.
fucking woo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean Maxi I think is going to win it, although there has been a lot more momentum for Kobe as of late, so I hope to see it. Like when Ja Morant won it, for example, it was just like what are we doing? Like did anyone not expect Ja Morant to
Dude,
take the leap that he did? Like what are we
that
doing?
pissed me off. All
Like it
right.
was so dumb.
Like
Ja gave the award to Desmond Bain, who was a much better candidate for it, by the way. But um
like 2022 John Morant, I liken that so much to like cool. Like Pascal took a leap, but that's
yeah.
because there was more shots to go around, dude. Like
Yeah.
2019 Pascal was just like, oh, Kawhi's leaving. Yeah, 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 yeah. Like that's literally all it was. I think a good example of what the MIP award should be is Laurie Markkinen
Yes.
because he goes to Utah, a team where it's like, who's going to be this established guy? And Markkinen's like, remember those flashes I showed in Chicago? They weren't just flashes.
Mm.
Remember what I was doing in Cleveland? They weren't just a taste. This is the full load. And he came out and did it. So this time, Kobe White does that. Maxi just takes up more usage and
Yeah.
more shots. That's not
Exactly.
most
Yeah, yeah.
improved.
Yeah, to me, the spirit of the award is which guy did we not think was going to be better than he was last year, and he was. You know what I mean? Like everyone thought Maxi would take a step forward. Everyone thought someone like Şengün would take a step forward. So, to me, yeah, it should be Kobe White, and then guys like a Denny or Aaron Nesmith. Those should be the guys considered for this award.
Yeah.
All right, let's quickly do Coach of the Year, and then we got to take a quick break. I think we can do it pretty
All
quickly
right.
though.
All right.
Um,
Who's your coach of the year, Mr. Shrimp?
so I went back and forth with this. Like I have five guys here who I feel pretty good about as my top five, but the order I switched around a lot. But
Oh, really?
I settled on University of Connecticut legend Mark Dagnall of the OKC Thunder as coach of the year, given, that they were like we talked about with the MVP discussion, just exceeded expectations, perhaps more than any other team. I mean, there's some other candidates here that we can talk about, but the Thunder definitely exceeded expectations, which is really one of the few sort of criteria that we can
For
use
coach,
for coach
yes.
of the year because so much of what makes a really good coach is the stuff that's all like behind the scenes that we have very, very little access to.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really hard. All you can really do is like which team exceeded expectations, who sort of performed better as a team than we thought they would or could. And
I only have only one name that is even like contending with Mark,
who
and
would
that's
that be?
Chris Finch. Chris Finch is the only name that I could even like not even like this is the thing. I think Mark D has such a chokehold on it that like for you to make the rest of your list, like you could say Finch, you could say Mazzala, you could say Tibbs, you could say Mosley.
Mazzala,
Yeah. I mean, why'd be like,
Joe Mozzarella.
yeah.
It's Missoula. No, the reason why I didn't have Finch is because as great as the Timberwolves were this season, it's not incredibly impressive to me that Rudy Gobert having a good defensive season ended up winning a lot of regular season games. And when I watched the Timberwolves this season, there was still plenty of the CTE Wolves moments late in games
Okay.
where like if it wasn't Mike Conley directing all traffic, it kind of just devolved back into like all the same problems we've had with Minnesota. So
But would you
that's
then give credit to a guy like Tibbs then more? Like, would you have Tibbs higher?
yes.
Okay.
Actually,
Okay.
what happened was I had Finch sort of as my fifth guy because the Timberwolves did finish with a good record, and then I thought of Tibbs, and I was like, no, he's way more deserving given, all the hardships that the Knicks had to go through this season. So my top five, I have Dagnall as a clear one. I put Ime Udoka second because, hear me out, hold on, Ime Udoka second because the way he was able to turn around, the Rockets went from looking like an AAU team last season to now they have a legit identity. They play real NBA basketball. There's a floor there now that they can build off
Oh,
of. Turning
brother.
turning that Rocket situation, that's not a situation that I think a lot of coaches could have turned around. Like 80-90% of coaches that they could have hired in that spot, it would have ended up with the same Rocket season we got last year where it's just a disaster. I think bringing in Udoka definitely gives them a legitimate foundation to build off of, and now I feel good about this Rockets team. Think about how you felt about the Rockets a year ago compared to now. I mean, it's for
I
me
mean,
at
they do
least, it's a
have a
completely different
whole
story.
essentially like new leadership in the locker room as well. Like in
Yeah, I mean,
terms
they
of
brought some
roster
guys in. Yeah,
construction, it is like
yeah,
way more
yes,
significant.
yes,
I
yes.
mean,
All due respect.
you could make the argument that like Rick Carlisle also kind of had that kind of like culture change with it. But I get it. I get it. Udoka
That's fair. Carlisle's one
lit,
I didn't consider. That's a good pick, I think, actually, but I didn't
yeah.
consider him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had Udoka second. Tibbs, I ended up with third on my list because of how good, the Knicks were able to finish the season. Missoula fourth because I thought when you're by far the best team in the league, the way that the Celtics were, like I think it has to be acknowledged with Coach of the Year. Like Missoula has his flaws. Celtics fans have their gripes with him, but what was it? They finished 64 wins. I mean, I think you got to give some credit to the coach. The way that he was able to manage that. I mean, the way he was resting guys at the end of the season and still finding the right combinations against the right teams
I
to
mean, I think if it was
still win these
any
games.
other year of like OKC not getting first, I think you would run away with that award. The only
Hmm.
problem is the storyline for
Yeah,
OKC getting first is
there's not
so
like
much
momentum
better.
behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had Jamal Mosley as my fifth because the Magic, getting or they're the five seed actually, Cavs are four, but getting up to five, I think is a huge accomplishment. Getting the way that the Magic have played defensively, given that I don't really look at their roster and think that it's a incredible defensive unit outside of like Jalen Suggs, but they've been one of the top five ish best defenses all season, and I wanted to recognize that. I think Jamal Mosley's done a great job. Now there was some accusations after Game One against the Cavs that he's just a handsome JB Bickerstaff, but this
He
is
is
a
a
regular
very
season award.
handsome man. That
It
is
is it is a
I
regular
will
season
say that.
award.
But yeah, like you should not be like changing the sliding criteria based off of a team that they're going to be incredibly outmatched in. I mean,
Mhm.
the spacing alone fucks Orlando. So it's
Yeah.
like I'm not going to hold him to that standard just
Hmm.
because Bankero gets 9 turnovers and makes zero threes.
Yeah,
Like
I'm not worried about
that's
what happens in the
that's
playoffs.
like I'm sorry, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna gripe on him for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we'll get to that Game One towards the end of this episode. But we're gonna take a quick break and then we have just two more awards to get to and then the teams. All right, coming back now, we have
Okay.
six man of the year. Mitchell Sider, I will let you go first. Who is your six man of the year for 2023-24?
Okay, well, I'll peel back the veil a little bit. Mr. Sherman started this right as I was about to criticize him a lot. But my sixth man of the year is Malik Monk.
Hmm.
What a surprise,
I think
right?
that's the
No,
people's choice. Yeah, pretty much the runaway favorite, I think.
because of just how, and here's my thing. It's not as though that like, Malik Monk had like a wildly different season than a guy like Norman Powell. Like statistically, Norman Powell was like the way better spot up shooter, and they played very similar positions and kind of like roles. But Malik Monk, in terms of the ability to like take a game over completely,
Hmm.
he did it way more times than anybody else that people have on this like ballot entirely. Um, it's like Monk was like a long shot pick, kind of like to begin the season because people were like, He's one of those guys that doesn't start enough to be disqualified from the award, who comes in and puts up the 15, 2, and 3, who's efficient, who's a spark plug scorer, who's the Jordan Clarkson kind of like in that spot. But, one thing that they say about these Kentucky guards is, they got them dogs in them.
Mm.
So Malik Monk definitely has that dog in him. Motherfucker had against one of the other six man of the year candidates, against Naz Reid and the Wolves, had a 39 piece. They just served him up on a hot platter. I think Kings are a weird spot to have like a six man because like historically speaking, like they've always had like blips of like, the Kevin Herters of the world come in and kind of like, this is how good somebody could be off the bench for the Kings because they have such pace. They have like such good kind of like cerebral playmaking with Fox that it just makes sense. Malik Monk doesn't need that. Malik Monk is a tough shot taker and maker. So I'm going to give Malik Monk the nod, but I do see that there is another name that's at least in contention on the same tier. Might not be the same like depth of the journey, but it's at least like two S tier candidates.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I
you
agree.
and there is another S tier candidate. I'll let you take who you have on that one.
No, I think the second guy is Naz Reid. I think
Yeah.
it's definitely him in that second place spot. Monk should win the award, but Naz Reid should almost definitely finish second. I think that he embodies what a six man means more than anyone else this season, given that he was a steady presence for them off the bench, but then when called upon to be a starter when needed, Cat's injury, he stepped up and filled that role about as perfectly as you could have expected him to. So for that, I think he definitely deserves to be considered, but Monk just objectively had the better season. Like he's just a better player, and he's just also someone who comes off the bench. So I think Monk's going to win it, but Naz Reid definitely is my second choice. And then I have Norm Powell third. He just kind of just off the statistical case, it didn't feel like he was this like overwhelming presence for them off the bench spark plug type of guy, even in comparison to prior seasons with the Clippers. But just statistically, he had one of the best seasons off the bench this year, so I thought he deserved third. But there's plenty of guys. Do you have anyone else like in the mix for you?
Not in the mix. Like a very distant fourth would be um like Bogdan for the
Yeah,
Hawks. You
yeah,
could
he's a
say
popular
Bobby
choice.
Portis for the Bucks. Like
Yeah, Portis
you
had his moments, but there were also some stretches where he was like really hurting them,
that's
and
what I
like
mean. Like
he was on the
he's
verge
a
of getting traded.
distant.
So
Yeah. I think you could make a case for Norman Powell to be more like you could be like, oh man, like this, like he had like really good highs for the Clippers.
mhm.
If Emmanuel Quickly wasn't traded to the Raptors, you could have made a case for
Yeah, for
Quickly.
sure, for sure.
But I think that's the thing is that there's so many like spots where you're like, it's clearly 1, 2, and then everybody else that it
Yeah.
really doesn't matter who else is on the ballot. I saw that some people were kind of like speculating Buddy Hield, but he didn't have enough like runway in terms of like Philly to like really even like
hmm
matter at that point.
Yeah.
So
And I
I
feel
mean,
like
because there
anyone that
was
gets traded, it's hard for you to then
yeah,
win
you
an end
can't
of
really
season award.
you
Yeah,
can't really
I
gauge
don't.
after
I
that.
can't think of an example where that's happened. I'm sure it's happened once or twice, but yeah. Is it too crazy? Like, is it just too biased if I throw Horford's name out there? Is that
Yeah,
crazy? Okay.
yes,
All
yes,
right. All right. Just
because
checking. Just checking.
he would probably be like fifth on that list,
Oh,
maybe.
that's fine. Okay, if he's even in consideration, I just want to throw his name out there.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Quickly, while we're talking about the Celtics, I didn't prep you for this. I'm assuming you didn't have one in mind, but executive of the year, Brad Stevens. I think that's a no doubter.
yeah. There wouldn't be even anybody in contention for the award of Executive of the Year. He just basically, in his first year of being like an actual movement maker, I guess that'd be the right word because like he's always had some sort of like
hmm
kind of say in there, but like the first time where he actually has the reins,
He was
he
the
assemb
decision maker. Yeah.
he assembled essentially the most dominant version of the Celtics that we've
hmm
seen in like our generation. And that includes the '08 Celtics, as much as this is going to be like a ha 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 thing. Like
No,
on paper,
statistically, yeah, yeah, it is.
yeah, on
Yeah.
paper, you guys have the most dominant five, like period. And not to mention that Drew extension, insane, insane value. Like having him take all of the contracts that you have and like manage them with like the precision of like a grandmaster in chess does not get talked about enough.
Yeah.
The fact that Porzingis
Got
has
his
such a
extension
nice
too. Yeah.
manageable extension too is insane. The fact that again, and I'll pick up that time machine phone when Derek White was acquired and Brad Stevens was, and it came out that Brad Stevens was one of the guys who was like, we need to get a guy like Derek White, and all you had to give up for him, one measly itty bitty tiny
Which I
first
was
round
worried
pick.
about at the time.
And all of these Boston fans, him included, and shout out to every single Boston fan that has ever been in the group chat feed that includes you, Celtics feed. Now he's like 08 Celtics something. Like anyway, Celtics feed said that it was a terrible trade at first. And Carter, shout out Carter Tracy, Trey Talks. The two Raptors fans said, "Oh my God, you have no idea how good Derek White is. Oh my fucking God!" Like that trade single handedly, Celtics fans were like, dude, Derek White's legitimately like a fringe all star. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah. So,
and nobody talked about it in San Antonio because DeJounte Murray was stealing all of his fucking minutes.
mhm.
DeJounte Murray leaves and Derek White looks like the second coming of Jesus. And then the Celtics get him. And I was like, come on. Really? Really,
Yeah.
Celtics fans? You're
Yeah.
going to act
Great
like
job
this
by
isn't
Brad
impossible?
Stevens. Yeah, he's been excellent. I will say on the Drew extension, the fully guaranteed part of it makes me a little bit nervous when the time comes, like 3 years from now. But yeah, saving like 10 mil on next season, the player option that he, subsequently declined. Yeah, it was a good deal for them. He's been excellent. I can't really point to anything he's done where I really, in hindsight, don't like. So he's been great. The last award before we get to the teams is Clutch Player of the Year. Now, this is the one where I really went sort of off the board because there's two primary candidates when you just look at, you go to nba.com/stats/clutch. But this is a word that, to be honest, I don't really care much about. So the fact that I'm going sort of off the board with this pick, it's fine. I don't really care. This is one that I still shout out to Booming Basketball. I'm going with Jalen Williams for the Clutch Player of the Year award. Mitchell Sider doesn't like it. Now, obviously, the heavy favorites are DeMar DeRozan and Steph Curry because they've played basically every single game this season in the clutch. So you look at their total clutch stats and they look like the heavy favorites. But to me, when I look back on the season and I think back to who had the most clutch moments, Jalen Williams comes to mind for me because just how often there were nights where not even just like the last few minutes of the game, like you look at the entire fourth quarter, he would take over in a lot of these games, um, in stretches at least. So that combined with like he shot like 70% true shooting in the fourth quarter this season. Like he was pretty electric in big moments. So I wanted to go with a pick that not many people will have, but I think is definitely deserving.
All right. Yeah, it's gonna be one of Curry or DeMar, and
It
there's
is. It
like
is.
literally no. But here's what I'm gonna say. This is if you want to go an off the board pick, and the only problem is sample size. Anthony Simons had top 5 points scored in the clutch, as well as like it was shooting splits, true shooting percentage, player efficiency, as well as points scored in the clutch. But it was only 18 games as opposed to the 43 that they considered clutch like game sample size for Curry and DeMar. So you can't really even like make an argument because like 18 games, you extrapolate that to 43,
Hmm.
he probably isn't still scoring that much. And to be fair, Curry was 4 and DeMar was 6 if you do like the no games thing.
Yeah.
Um so it's going to be one of those two. Interesting that you chose J-Dub and not, Shea, the guy on his team that would actually rank higher in terms of like the clutch shooting and the player tracker odds, but you know, if you really want to break it down to brass tacks, it is a very left field pick and I respect you for choosing it
Thank you.
despite the fact that like if you don't do the eye test, Shea also had more clutch moments than J Dub this year. But yeah, what can you do, right?
It's a reflection of how much I care about this award and how much
For
I think
award
it
that
should
means
still
nothing
exist.
at
Yeah,
all. Yeah.
it's whatever. We can move on. It's a pretty useless award that's going to go to DeMar DeRozan because all you have to do is go to the clutch stats page on NBA.com and that's how you figure out the winner. So it's
You
it's
go that one.
that guy at the top of the list. We'll go with him. So yeah, whatever. I went with J Dub, but it'll be DeMar. So let's move to the teams. So we'll start with All NBA. I think the
Let's
first
go
team.
reverse order
Okay,
instead
you
of
want to
going
start with the
first
third
team.
team?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I'll mention a couple guys that I had just on the fringes that didn't quite make it for me that I think deserve a shout. Paul George, probably the first guy off for me. It's a pretty deep, wing forward class. So for me, he fell just short. A guy like Wemby, someone I considered, but given how bad the Spurs were,
Ooh.
I didn't.
Okay.
I had him on the list. I had to write him down. But yeah, I think next year's the year. Someone like Bam Adebayo was close for me. Zion, I think if he had been a little bit more consistent, would have probably gotten a third team spot for me, but it took him a while for him to really get going. But he's really established himself as like the guy for the Pelicans now. So I think, moving forward, he could be an All NBA guy. And then
Yeah.
the last two, sort of like my All NBA fourth team, really, that I'm giving here. Paolo for what he did, leading the Magic, and then Kyrie, because when I looked at all the guards and I just thought about, consistent production for a winning team, I went with Kyrie over someone like Fox or, um, someone on a team that, missed out in the playoffs. So that's sort of my snub team. Any quibbles there?
So right away, I already know now that Jaylen Brown has made an All NBA team in your books,
He
and
did.
I'm gonna assume your hardest snub might actually be Sabonis at that point, unless you also have Sabonis on your third team, in which I tip my hat to you, sir, because that's a very respectable one. Now, this one's crazy for me. I want you to actually right now give me your third team, and I just want to see how much our third team lines up.
Okay. So I have JB and Sabonis on my third team. I threw LeBron on there as well because at the end of the day, he's one of the 15 best players in the league. And when it comes to someone like that, like a LeBron or a Curry, because Curry's also on my third team, it's kind of like someone has to sort of take their spot from them. Like those are guys that I know are top 15 players. And it's not
Okay.
like they had poor seasons. And there was just no one that I really felt like took the spot from them. So I held them on to, third team. And then I'm kind of cheating here. My last spot, I have either Booker or Halliburton. I really couldn't decide once Halliburton reached the games played minimum because for stretches, like there was a point in the season I thought Halliburton was a lock for the first team. Obviously, after he had that hamstring injury, like you're right around, in season tournament final, he cooled off quite a bit. It was pretty bad for a stretch. Um, so I went back and forth. I probably would lean Booker if you made me pick, but I had both those guys down and I really couldn't decide. So that's my third team. It's Curry. I'll say Booker, Jaylen Brown, LeBron, and Sabonis. I try to keep it not positionless. I don't really like that it's positionless, especially for all NBA. So did my best to keep it that way. I could have, slid Sabonis off for Halliburton or PG, something like that, but I wanted it to look like an NBA team. So
Okay. Okay. So ours is a little different.
okay,
So my third team, and you're gonna kind of like irk and squeam at this one.
I just might.
So I've got all right. Anthony Edwards made the third team,
Okay, that's fine.
followed by Wardell Stephen Curry,
Uh huh.
Devin Booker,
Uh huh.
Jaylen Brown, and then Sabonis. Hallie is my first name off the board just because of the stark fucking contrast between first 30 and last 40.
Right.
Holy shit. Night
Yeah.
and day different player. What I understand the hamstring injury, but there was something different
Yeah, it
about
wasn't just that. That was
like
sort of like the breaking point, like the differential there. But
yeah.
yeah, it wasn't just that because
Because
even once,
remember, it's an entire season award. It's
yeah.
not, oh, you had a really good stretch. Get on there, Zion.
Hmm.
You did a great job towards the end.
Exactly.
Like no, no. If you made me like really choose, I would be like, okay, like here's Sabonis has made such like an incredible jump in terms of not being a complete liability on defense. His scoring input has actually made no, 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 no,
A
no, no.
jump? I don't know. He
No,
made like a
yeah,
hop.
he went from literally if it's the final 4 minutes of the game, you are switching onto him as much as you possibly can to oh okay he actually slid with his defender this time.
I
Shit,
guess.
no 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 not I guess
Better.
that
Yeah.
he has made that jump and I will show you the film if you want
He's
to sit
still
down and
okay, but he's
watch it.
still hurting them defensively overall, I would say.
He will not be a positive net defender.
Yeah.
He will not be the when he's on the floor you're a minus 15
Yeah,
like
he's
that's
improved. He's
that's
improved. Yeah.
yeah.
And he is in my third team because of how consistent he was.
So that it's really hard for me to leave out Halliburton because it's like you could actually make a case to say that the consistency of Paul George made more sense than Halliburton anyway. But
Hmm.
having PG on the third team would kind of be doing like a disservice to guys like Sabonis. Jaylen Brown to me wasn't really deserving of like the individuals, but the 15 game gap between Boston's 1 and 2, like you
Yeah.
have to have two all NBA players at that point.
Exactly.
Like you
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of just culturally accepted that you have to. So yeah, it would be Ant, Steph, Booker, and then JB and Sabonis. And
So it's
I'm
pretty
not.
similar. You have Ant third team instead of LeBron compared
Yep.
to mine. I have Ant on the second team.
Mhm. For me, there has been as much as I want to be like, haha, Lakers 46 wins, you guys fucking suck, blah blah blah. It's like I got to see firsthand what I thought was going to be the LeBron kind of like flop and flounder for this season, and what I thought Ant was going to take SGA's spot in terms of like probably the best wing in the league. And then I was like, man, Ant really was not the same guy from summer to start the season. Like he had, this is kind of my main thing. Like Ant had like a woo woo woo. He had the Arctic Monkeys synthesizer essential
Yeah.
season where it was like peaks and valleys and peaks and
Hmm.
valleys and peaks and valleys. Shea just looked like the fucking Nasdaq EB Games stock and just went straight fucking up, and it was great. And LeBron didn't have the same valleys as Ant did for a little bit there. Like I get Lakers, it's going to be a meme. They're not going to do shit. Period. They're going to get bounced by Denver,
Hmm.
and the Suns might actually lose to Minnesota. So you could blah blah blah, but it's a regular season award. I'm not gonna take what Ant did in game one of the Suns and be like, oh, get on
Yeah.
that second team, big buddy. No, I will admit that you went from everybody talking to you being the man to disappointing me for a little bit. In fact, some of his worst games this season came against the Suns.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now he's
Absolutely.
turning it up. So I give him credit for that. But he is not, to me, somebody who deserves a second team over the likes of like
Well, go ahead. Give me
blank,
your second
blank,
team.
blank
Go ahead.
play. Okay,
Yeah.
all
Go
right,
ahead. Give me your
okay.
second team.
Again, I really think that I'm not reaching too hard, but I feel like I'm gonna just base your reactions off of this one.
Okay.
All right. So right off the bat, this is not an NBA team because it does not make sense positionally, but we've
All right.
got
That's fine.
Kawhi,
Hmm.
we've got AD,
Hmm.
we've got LeBron, we've got, this is the fucking hardest
Oh.
part, Giannis on the second team. I know, I know, I know, I know, I
Ooh.
know, I know. Kawhi, AD, KD, LeBron, Giannis. I know, I know what you're thinking.
Ooh.
How the hell does Giannis make the fucking second team? I was splitting hairs with him and another
Hmm.
player that I will not mention for the first team, but the player on the first team had to go through so much more bullshit with his team, so much more inconsistencies, and still trudged his team to what I would humbly say is an overachieving record for what they
Hmm.
had to do. So my first team might be a little fucking crazy, but Giannis makes my second team.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So you have read it for me one more time.
So we have Kawhi, Anthony Davis, KD, LeBron, Giannis.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So ours, yeah. At the end of the day, ours are pretty similar, but I do have Giannis first team. My second team, I have KD, AD, Kawhi, Anthony Edwards, like I said, and then I have Jalen Brunson in my final spot. He fell short. Like I said, MVP and All NBA to me are slightly different awards. Um, Jalen Brunson, his value to the Knicks, I think, is like higher than what his individual production was. So I think he ranks higher on the MVP ballot than an All NBA one. So he's the sixth guy. He's the top guy on my All NBA second team, which would leave SGA, Luka, Tatum, Giannis, Jokic as my first.
Mm-hmm.
So that means
That is
you have SGA, Luka, Brunson, Tatum, Jokic.
I so yeah, my actual first team would literally be just pretty much swapping where Giannis would be on your first. So it'd be Luca,
Yeah.
SGA, Tatum, Jokic, Brunson. And I, as much as I was like, Brunson's story on this Knicks lineup is so much fucking poetic like justice for kind of like seeing Luca strive now and seeing Brunson strive now is so good for the hoops harmony soul. But I feel bad for what Brunson has had to go through with his Knicks season. Not once did he have a full stretch with everybody being healthy.
Hmm.
He had to fucking rely on so many like if Malachi Flynn is dropping 50 for your team, you have some deep fucking injuries, dude.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
you
Right.
like and not to mention, he finished out the season with like I think his official line on the season is 28 and a half, 3.5 boards and 7 assists, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And he finished the season averaging
Fucking
like 35.
fucking fantastic
Yeah.
goddamn stretch towards the end. So I think with having like a player of the week under his belt, I think he actually is first team material.
Hmm.
Like you said, he would be that sixth if I could like flip and flop him. I think Giannis again, like in my opinion, my paradigm's shifted. I think the MVP is more of like an individualistic award in terms of like storyline between it, and I think the All NBA is you are one of X best players in the league and you've proved it. And I think Brunson has proved that he's in that tier of You could place him as like a top teens player. You could see stretches where he's a top 10 level producer. Like
Hmm.
there's terms of like, bing bang boom.
Yeah,
But
he's reaching in my mind. He's sort of reaching like that Jimmy Butler during the bubble tier, where it's like you kind of have to have him top 10 ish, but like realistically,
there's
he's not like
arguments for
super.
like 13, 14.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's what I
exactly.
mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I think I have no real issues with your All NBA, honestly. We have all of the same guys. The only issue I think I have with my own team, I'm tempted to put Jaylen Brown ahead of either Kawhi or KD, probably Kawhi for second team, just given how they ended the season. Like KD was like pushing for like borderline first team for me. Like he was almost gonna steal it for Tatum up until a few weeks ago. I just don't really like obviously Kawhi's missed all types of time. He's out. I got Clippers Mavs here. He's out for game 1 of that. Like he's missed a lot of time. Obviously those guys are better than Jaylen Brown. They've had better seasons, but the way they ended just sort of
But we have 15 more wins in the second seed, and you need
yeah.
to have to like, dude.
What can I
I
say?
I think the community would be outraged if JP made the second team, but would be equally outraged if he's left off of the third team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's
Because
fair.
there are people that genuinely believe that Jaylen Brown should not be an All NBA teamer. There are people
They're
who
haters.
have PG on that list who have. I've seen people put Bam third team, and I laughed so fucking hard, dude. I was like,
No,
you don't watch basketball.
he's like a pretty good like fourth team candidate. Like I said, he's one of the guys I
Yeah.
left off, but no, yeah, he's not. He's kind of always been in that like almost all NBA tier. He's like almost like always a guy that you mention as like the fourth or fifth center, but yeah, hasn't had a season quite yet where he breaks out. But yeah, I think it's pretty. It'll be pretty much consensus of who the 15 guys are. Maybe like 16 if you count Halliburton. Um, yeah, I think those you got a pretty solid ballot. Can't complain there. All defense, I think is we talked defensive
This
player of the
one is
year.
funny because it's like there's been some people who I initially thought would be like runaway members of this
Hmm.
team, and not actually like as clear cut as I thought it was going to be. But I kind of want to hear who you have to like headline this list.
So I tried to keep it again not positionless. But it's pretty hard. Like the best defensive players are centers. So I did at least 2 guards on each team, and then the other 3 just front court players. So my first team is Derek White, Alex Caruso, AD, Wemby, and Gobert, which I feel pretty good about. Like that feels like the 2 best perimeter defenders in the league, and then the 3 best sort of rim protectors. Um, there's like when we get to the second team, I have 10 guys that I try to like cut down to 5 spots, but to me that top 5, like I feel very good about that.
Okay, my thing is so like so I've got Rudy, Vic, Caruso, White, AD. Like
Yeah.
boom, like we're mental connection here. Bam is not a first team all NBA defender. I'm sorry for you people out there who are putting Bam first. First of all, 4 centers and then Caruso, like shut the fuck up. Get the
Yeah,
fuck out
that's
of here.
no fun. Like what are we
Get
doing?
That's not gonna happen. And voters know that. The second team is so hard, dude.
It
Holy
really is. It
shit.
really
Like
is.
I'm gonna lead with my second team, and you're gonna think that it's a bit fucking crazy.
Go ahead. Yeah, there's a lot of guys.
All right. Suggs, Herb Jones, because I fucking love him this season.
Hmm.
I This one was hard because I actually have Holiday on the second team. And I know that's a bit egregious to like, because you imagine 2 All NBA players and 2 offense, like think about that. Like, there's gonna be people saying like, "What the fuck?" Like, there's that
I mean, it's
doesn't
True
make any
Holiday.
sense.
You know what I mean?
But
I don't think people are
but
really.
but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes fucking
Yeah.
sense. So Suggs, Jones, Holiday. I so badly wanted to put Kawhi. I so badly did for
Interesting.
like kind of like I resonated a lot this season because he played a lot more like two way. I had guys like Scotty who I was kind of considering it, but at the end I ended up with Hardenstein because he has just been a
I
phenomenal
like that pick. I like
interior
that.
presence. I truly believe that Hardenstein, and this is kind of crazy, should lock down at least like 30 plus minutes if he doesn't just get the starting nod automatically for next season. Because like
Yeah, he should.
I don't know what like the Mitchell Robinson kind of like love is anymore. I know that
I
sounds
never knew what
crazy,
it was personally. I never.
but Knicks fans fucking love him.
They
I don't
do.
get
They
it.
do.
I
Yeah, I
don't.
don't get it either. I don't get his contract. I don't really get any part of it. He's a solid, rim running energy big, but like,
Yeah.
yeah, this idea of him being like your
Oh, sorry,
starting
sorry. And
center.
then I have Jaden McDaniels as my
Okay.
fifth to slide in there.
Gotcha.
But again, like the Mitchell Robinson thing. Sorry to go on a tangent here. Hardenstein has just hit so much better, dude, in
Yeah.
every sense of the word. Like, there's not one thing aside from offensive rebounding that Mitchell Robinson excels at more than Hardenstein.
Catching
And
lobs, I guess.
like, and yeah, but Hardenstein's like he's
He's way more
so
skilled. He's a way more talented basketball player.
so much more
Yeah.
talented offensively,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so much more mobile defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just like when I watch Hardenstein play, I'm like, this is a dude who knows how to buy into his fucking role for New
Right.
York and
And
how
I
to like
think
make
I
that.
think in the reverse too, like I think Tibbs finally figured out how to use him. Because you look at like his production last year, kind
Yeah.
of felt like, oh, maybe that Clipper stint was kind of a fluke, but it's like no, like Tibbs just had to figure out how to use this
No,
guy.
I
Um,
think I think once Tibbs was like, oh wait a minute, this guy like low key can
yeah.
buy into my schemes and he
Yep.
knows what he's doing. He started clicking that shit like no tomorrow. My biggest snub, I and this one might actually kind of seem like a little crazy. Dylan Brooks is an
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
big
yeah.
snub for me
Mm-hmm.
because it's not as though it's the Mikal Bridges paradigm in like the Twilight Zone of like, oh, he has more offensive touches, therefore he's a worse defensive player. No, but Dylan Brooks is still like great defensive player. He just wasn't like if I could make another team, it would be guys like it would be probably like Dylan Brooks, Okoro, Chris Dunn, Chet, and then like Scotty or something like that. But
Oh,
the
a couple
problem
more
is,
names, a couple more snubs, but go
well, I
ahead.
mean, like Evan Mobley is a potential slub. Brooke Lopez is interesting. KCP actually been a
KCP is a good one.
fantastic
KCP is a
defender.
good shout.
Um, I don't want to give Aaron Gordon a nod because Denver's scheme is very much like kind of like overload and switch heavy. So it's like
Hmm.
I don't know how much like of that I want to give him. Um, Lou Dort is an interesting one. I don't know about this year. Evan Mobley was an interesting one, but the time missed hurt him. Um,
Still two
I
guys on my short list that you haven't mentioned.
two guys. Who are those two
Yeah.
guys?
Well, let me get so my second team, I have Drew Holiday and Suggs, like you. I have Herb Jones as well. And then my last two spots are kind of like you could say reputation picks because they're like popular names, but I had Giannis and Bam as my two front
Mm.
court guys. A lot of guys I considered, like Jalen McDaniels, I think was a great pick, one of my first guys off. Um, this was when I said I was trying not to be too biased. I considered Porzingis, but there's just too much competition ahead of him. Guys like Chet, guys like who do I have on my list here? Like Bam, like I said, that I end up with. But no mention for Nickeil Alexander Walker.
In terms of like, so here's the thing. So you chose two guys almost purely off of namesake for Giannis. Giannis is not an all defensive player this year. He's a like top 20, top 15 maybe. I'm not putting him on like the second list just off of like sheer namesake alone. Na is weird to me because the amount that I've watched of him this year, he has been so much better on the offensive side of the ball that I almost haven't seen him like as a hound that much on defense, I guess. Like if he has actually gotten to the point where he's like a legitimate second all NBA defender, then I guess I'm a casual for not seeing that because I think there would be like three names ahead of him before he even reaches that
Mhm.
second list. Like again, I've seen Dylan Brooks this season have lock in moments, but
Yeah.
just not do it all year. I
Yeah.
would still pick him ahead of Nah. I guess if that makes me a casual
No,
watching
I'd have
standpoint,
Brooks
but
ahead of No. I would. Brooks is on my short list as well. The only other two guys that you didn't mention, Keon Ellis, who I think actually falls short for the games played minimum, but Keon Ellis was fantastic on defense this season. And then I think Josie is just gonna get mad if we don't mention SGA. I wouldn't really consider him. Like I know like the steals and all that. And a lot of people will probably have him on a second team, so I just wanted to mention him.
um, I think Shea would make a third team if it existed.
Hmm.
Uh, strictly off of like success for the player, but I don't think he's a top
Yeah.
10 to
Yeah, I
11
don't
defender
really
in the
think of
league.
him that way either, but I know people will have him in the mix. And then lastly, let's wrap up with all rookie. So we already did our top five. But any other names that you feel like deserve mention for like all rookie second team?
Well, I mean, like, so like you didn't have Amon on your
No,
first
I had
team,
both
right?
the Thompson twins in consideration for second team.
Or second team? I mean,
Yeah.
like you okay, so what you could do then is move pods up to the first team
Hmm.
because that like to me that would make a little more sense instead of trying to be like okay, like here's the reason that Lively deserves to be the third center on the first, or it's obviously Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Brandon Miller occupying those spots. So let's bump up pods to the first team, and then we'll
Hmm.
do the Thompson twins. Are you how much of a fan are you of Lively in general versus putting a guy like Keontae George or Jordan Hawkins or like how many centers is too many centers is my
Uh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really too worried about positions for all rookie. I'll just read you my teams quickly. I had Pods, Brandon Miller, Hawkes, Chet, and Wemby as the first team. That feels like a pretty solidified top five. Those are the five best rookies to me, without question.
okay.
Second team, Keontae, George, Kassan Wallace, Lively,
And then the
G-
Thompson twins.
and then the Thompson twins. And then I wanted to really include GG Jackson. Like I really wanted to put him on there, but just didn't get added to the rotation soon enough in the season. Just doesn't have like the totals. But
Okay.
I think was one of the best 10 rookies from this class. And then
So then Koulibaly is like a
yeah,
mention.
Koulibaly is the next guy off my list. Yeah.
Would you put Anthony Black on a hypothetical third? Nah, that doesn't
Probably
compete.
not. A name that comes to mind sooner than that would be like Hawkins, because he
Or
had a really good
Sasser or
stretch.
Trace Jackson Davis kind
Yeah,
of thing.
Trace Jackson Davis as well. Sasser, yeah, I guess Sasser had a pretty solid season.
Grady Dick, like that would be another name off the board
Ah, maybe
there.
not, maybe not. That's where it starts to fall off, I think.
Okay.
Before we get out of here, let's just talk quickly about some of the game ones that we've seen from the first round of the playoffs. As we speak now, the Clippers lead the Mavericks 70-47, about halfway through the third quarter. So not much to discuss here. I've actually haven't
I'm
really.
gonna go on a wild assumption and say that the Clippers are dominating the offensive side of the glass. Zubats has probably pulled down like 10 boards by now.
He has
And
an
I'll
11. He
also
has 16 and 11. I just saw it flash on the screen.
okay, so there we go. So 11 boards.
Yeah.
And I'm also gonna go on assumption that it's probably a matter of like, is Harden having a good game or is
It looks
PG
like
having
it. Yeah, I've only just for those watching on YouTube, the reason why I keep looking over to this direction is because the TV is right here. So I haven't watched a ton, but I'm trying to keep up with it. It seems like there's a lot of Tim Hardaway Jr., like way too much Tim Hardaway Jr. going on. I
okay.
imagine he's probably 1 for 8 from three. But yeah,
Has
I've seen
Gafford got
Harden
it
hit some
going
step
yet, or
backs.
is Gafford contributed right now, or is it a matter of like Zubats just dominating him?
I can't really tell. I did see Lively sub in for him, and it seems like things started to go better once that happened. But again, I've just been like glancing every few minutes over here, so
Alrighty.
have not got a great sense. As far as yesterday goes, first game was Cavs Magic. Really, I think it was an ugly game as we all expected it to be. A big like defensive grinded
Donovan
out kind
Mitchell,
of game.
masterclass. Let's fucking go.
I think to me, I was more disappointed with Orlando's offense than I was impressed with Cleveland's defense. Like that's kind of my takeaway. It felt like Orlando just couldn't score more so than like Cleveland was just so suffocating on defense. Mobley was fantastic. Like
Hello,
Mobley,
Orlando Magic. You need Gary Trent Jr.? No problem. We got you. You need the shooting? No problem.
actually, I think the phone call you meant to make was over to the Bay. Klay Thompson, you are an Orlando magician. Um, but yeah, really the only takeaway from that game is that Orlando is just going to struggle to score the ball, and that's really all it comes down to. I think the Cavs are gonna get past the first round this year, just because Orlando just doesn't have it. But they definitely have a good, solid foundation that they can build off of if they can use some of that cap space for some offense, just some shot creation. Second game, Timberwolves Suns. I'll let you take the lead on this one because
Woo!
took a fat nap. I'm not even gonna lie, I accidentally fell asleep, so I
Okay.
only caught recaps and things like that. So for someone who watched it live, give us a quick 60-second synopsis.
All right, 60 second synopsis. Every single player on the Suns was really fucking angry at Anthony Edwards because Anthony Edwards was raw dogging Kevin Durant on live television. Weirdly enough, Nickeil Alexander Walker would be the second best player on the floor for multiple stretches of the game. Now, Kevin Durant talking a lot of shit with Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards, it is time to steal the fucking torch from this poor baby back Suns team. I don't even care if the Suns win. Right now, they've been demoralized because Anthony Edwards came in and said, fuck the regular season record. I'm here to win the playoffs.
Hmm.
All of the worst games that Anthony Edwards has had this season, majority of them have come against the Suns. He stepped into the entire echelon of everybody saying he can't do it and showed that he's the best player in this series.
Yep.
So
Yeah. See, this is why I said like the regular season matchup sometimes doesn't matter. Like sometimes you can do really well against one team and then shit the bed in the playoffs, or vice versa, and that's what we're seeing through one game with Anthony Edwards. So I did catch like I still feel like I have a good sense of what happened in the game, but I just didn't watch it live. So I figured I'd let you take the lead on that. Knicks Sixers was a pretty solid game as far as day one of the playoffs went.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid game. Embiid early on, was easing into the game a little bit and then started to get comfortable. Tried to dunk one down and then, had that weird sort of flare up with his knee. Was not the same for the rest of the game. and obviously that's going to be the storyline of the rest of the series. I think this could be a pretty competitive 6 or 7 game series if Embiid is able to stay out there consistently. But the odds of that happening, we got better odds of this podcast getting 100K views. Let's be
Yeah.
real. So,
Embiid,
um,
when you do listen to this podcast, though, because you're gonna do it when you get home tonight, why on God's green earth would you play summer basketball like for the Olympics this
yeah,
year
I for
when you could
everyone
just be
involved, like
rehabbing your
there's
leg?
no reason. Like injury aside, there's no reason for him to be playing for Team USA, but that's a different discussion. But yeah, him and Kawhi as well. Like those two spots on the 12-man roster will probably be replaced. Shout out to Jalen Brunson and Jalen Brown. You are Olympians. The next game, the nightcap, Lakers Nuggets. Not too much to say. It's if you watch last year's conference finals, it was basically game 5 of that series. The Nuggets are just a little bit better than the Lakers. Like it's a pretty good matchup. They play good basketball, like it's entertaining, but the Nuggets are just better. Like they're just going to be able to execute better in the last 5 minutes of these games. I think the Nuggets have won 9 straight now against the Lakers, and basically every single time it's the same story of it's
And
fairly
D'Lo
competitive.
has hit 5 of his 24 attempted threes in the last
Yes,
5 games against the
yes, that's maybe the
Nuggets.
biggest thing to know is D'Lo was stinky in game 1. Yeah, not much more to say. I mean, this year it could go 5 games instead of 4 because I think the gap is a little bit closer because you like the loss of like a Bruce Brown. But yeah, the Nuggets are just flat out a better team, and they're just going to execute better down the stretch. And there's really not much more to it. And then today's games, the Heat Celtics game, no Jimmy. It was a blowout. I mean, it was kind of competitive for a little bit there in the second quarter, and then Celtics blew it open to like 35. Took the foot off the gas. They got back down to like 15, but was never really in question. The Celtics had a double-digit lead the entire second half, and pretty much probably what we're going to see the rest of the series, unless Jimmy makes a miraculous comeback. Or the Heat start playing zone because they did that for a stretch there, and Tatum turned into a sixth grader, couldn't figure out how to attack his own defense. But I think it's the Celtics in 5, and then like we said, Clippers are beating up on the Mavericks right now. I guess once we're done recording here, I'm gonna probably run this back and try to watch as much as I can, like in full, so I can see why the hell the Mavs can't score. But yeah, not really sure what's going on in that one. But yeah, that should do it for this episode. That was our 2023-24 awards ballot, and we'll be back soon. Once we're a game or two into all these series, and there's just some more stuff to talk
A
about.
sample size to
Yeah,
talk
there's
about.
yeah there's some adjustments being made, and we can talk about that sort of thing. We'll be back with another episode. Oh my God, Paul George almost ended Maxi Kleber's career. He missed the dunk though. Anyway, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back very soon.